Hello, beloved Youest listeners, my soul family. Today is a really, really special day for you, for me, and for all those that are tuning in, and I hope it's many. I am so excited to be here with one of my most favorite authors and luminaries, people, and just getting to talk to him a little before you're going to get to meet Neale Donald Walsch. I can tell you he is a man of incredible heart and wisdom. And so, without further ado, I want to share with you a little bit about our incredible guest today. So grateful. Neale Donald Walsch has written 39 books on contemporary spirituality and its practical application in everyday life, including the 9-book Conversations with God series. His titles have been translated into 37 languages. His latest book is The God Solution, an amazing book. This was published in December 2020, and it proposes an altered and totally non-traditional spiritual approach to ending the seemingly interminable struggles of our species. The God Solution invites humanity to embrace a new global ethic based on a refined and clarified definition of God. This book proposes that there is a single statement of spiritual truth upon which all the world's religions could agree, and which would birth a shift of spiritual paradigms around the globe of such magnitude that it would produce peace and happiness in our planet at last. You can find more about Neale Donald Walsch at his website, nealedonaldwalsch.com. We'll have all of this in the show notes. And I just got to share before we bring him on for you to get to meet the amazing Neale Donald Walsch yourself, just share with you that this book, Conversations with God, Part 1, literally has been with me since I read it about 8 years ago. And through the pandemic, I read or listened to him almost every single day. And so, again, such an honor. Without further ado, it is such a pleasure to bring you on, Neale, and to talk about your newest book, anything you feel like talking about, because I got to say, whatever comes out of your mouth, I'm like, wisdom. So thank you for being here. What a gift.
Ja, begrijpt wat je officieel dat was is as a Vinek, she said whatever comes out of my mouth is, and I just wanted to see if she really meant it or if she was just putting you all on. Guys,
is that Russian?
I have to say, I hear words like that from Julie, and they're very kind and very generous, maybe even generous to a fault. Could I just begin, please, my friends, by telling you that I'm not a luminary by any definition. Don't I wish I was, but I'm an ordinary person who simply had an extraordinary experience. And I was given the opportunity to pass that experience along to others. And I did take that opportunity, fair enough, but that's my only achievement really in this life. If somebody were to ask me what my goal is for the rest of my life, it would be to actually live full out the messages that I've been invited to share. So please don't consider me a luminary, but if you want to call me, an unhealed messenger, I'll accept that title. That's what I am, an unhealed messenger. But at least I know now, for the first time in my life, where I'm going and why. And I didn't know that for the first 50 years of my life. So at least I have that I can fall back on, and that's the truth of me. So pretend that Julie introduced me by saying, here's a man who has failed at just about everything, relationships, career, even keeping his health in decent shape. He's failed at just about everything, but at least now he knows why. And now he's moving forward with his life and doing the best he can. If that were the introduction, I would say, thank you. And here I am. How can I serve you?
Wow. We could do a takeover. However,
no, you're not going to do a takeover. I want people to really hear what I just had to say, because I want them to know. I want everyone who's listening and watching now to know that it's totally okay to be right where you are.
Mm,
You don't have to be at some elevated place. It's okay if you are, gosh knows, but
yeah.
it's not required. And God is not looking down on you, making a list and checking it twice and going to find out who's naughty and nice. That's not the God of this universe. So
Yeah.
that's a message I want everyone to hear,
Yeah.
and they can see it in me for sure.
Really, really beautiful what you just said. And obviously I can feel the authenticity. And one of the things you said that I think is really was just powerful was you said that you didn't know where you were going, but now you do. And I was thinking maybe we could start out just by where are you going? What does that mean to you?
Thank you for asking, Julie. I'm going to a place where I feel that I'm serving my soul's agenda. You see, I didn't know that my soul had an agenda. I knew all about the soul in loose terms. As a child, I heard about it from my upbringing in a parochial school. And of course, you hear about it all over the internet and all over in books you read, the soul this, the soul that. But I didn't really understand, that the soul had an agenda, that the soul was actually an aspect of my being, the most powerful, the most important aspect of my being. And so where I'm going now is to a place where I can feel that I am now actually serving my soul's agenda, that I'm no longer wandering about the planet trying to figure out how to get through life or what my goals and objectives should be. Julie,
Yeah.
as a child, and as a young man in my late teens, 17, 18, 19, in those early years of my life, I was kind of taught, not specifically by my parents, but by my culture,
Yeah.
by civilization. I was told, Neale, here are the rules of the road. Here's your agenda. Get
Yeah.
the car, get the girl. By the way, you had to have the car in order to get the girl. So no car, no girl.
In that
So
order.
in that order. But
Right.
get the car, get the girl, get the job. Ultimately get the house, get the spouse, get the children, get the better job, get the better car, get the better house, get the better spouse, get the better spouse, get the better spouse. And then if you're lucky, you get the office in the corner with your name on the door, maybe even get the building on the corner with your name on the building. And then finally, get the retirement watch and get the gray hair and get the cruise tickets and get the sickness and then get out.
Mm.
That was basically the formula. I was
Yeah.
seeing everybody in my life living. And I thought, okay, that's what I needed to do. Get the car, get the girl, get the job, et cetera, et cetera. And then I can maybe have a halfway decent life. It's only when I got to be 50 years old, I'm talking about half a century on the planet, Julie,
Yeah.
before I had even the slightest inkling of what I'm really doing here, who I really am, and why I came to, if you please, the realm of the physical. What's this really all about?
Yeah.
It never even occurred to me, and no one was teaching me. No one was telling me. There were no college courses on this topic, and when I was being taught by the world's religions, with respect, because there's great wisdom in the world's religions. I'm not here to religion bash, but what I was taught by the world's religions, I've since learned was simply not inaccurate. Much of it, as I said, contained great wisdom, but Julie, it was incomplete.
Yeah.
And so I didn't have the whole picture. And so I was moving through life, to give you an analogy, to use a metaphor, like a child who had learned to add and subtract, but and thinks that's all there is to mathematics. I can add and subtract. I'm in fourth grade, and I'm really good at addition and subtraction. And then you wake up one day and realize that's not all there is to mathematics. There's algebra and geometry and calculus and higher math and algorithms and all sorts of aspects of mathematics we didn't even knew existed, much less what we're using in our daily life. And I use that as kind of a metaphor because that's how it feels to me, that we have experienced the thing in life that we call God, or if you please, Allah, Brahman, Yahweh, Jehovah, whatever word we use to refer to that ineffable essence that we call the divine. So, we don't know the half of it, it seems to me. And that's why I began looking seriously at the question, is it possible just possible
Mm.
that there's something we don't understand here fully about God,
Yeah.
about life, and about ourselves, the understanding of which would change everything. And that's what led me to have what I've come to call my conversations with God.
Mm. I feel like, so this always happens, a flood of questions. And I know I want to come back to your book now. Would it be okay though to ask you a question about just how that came to be, the conversations with God? I'd always was wondering, I know you've talked about in the book, you were in the middle of the night and there was a legal pad. I actually pictured it. I was like, hey, legal pad, you got the pencil. I'm like, this must have been a couple years ago. And did you, we've talked a lot about intuition or that sense of connection. Did it come, was it audience? Did you feel an energy? Like, I'm just curious how that rushed in, that information for you.
Well, let me explain to you why it rushed in. First of all, I woke up one morning about 26, 27 years ago in the middle of the night. It was 4:23 in the morning. And I was just flush with anger, really. I just woke up angry because I must have been having not such a pleasant dream. But I know I woke up in the middle of the night thinking, I don't understand. Why is my life the way it is?
Yeah.
What does it take to make life work?
Mm.
And what have I done to deserve a life of such continuing struggle?
Mm.
And so I tried to go back to sleep, but I was unsuccessful. So I thought, oh, the heck with it. I threw back the covers and went out to the couch in the little apartment. It wasn't even an apartment. It was a little cottage in the back of someone's house, kind of a in-law or grandmother's cottage that this rich couple had on the back of their property. And I was renting it for very little money, relatively speaking. I'm sitting there on the couch, and there was a yellow legal pad. It happened to be on the coffee table. And I picked it up. There was a pen there, and I started writing an angry letter to God. I just thought, and I wrote those same questions. Dear God, what does it take to make life work? And somebody tell me the rules. I'll play. I promise. I'll play. Just give me the damn rule book. And after you give me the rules, don't change them, because it felt like the rules of life were changing every time I turned around. And I was furious. I was really angry. And that's when I really felt the presence. I heard a voice over my right shoulder, or at least I thought I did. Of course, I turned around. There was nobody there. But the voice said, Neale, do you really want answers to all of these questions? Or are you just venting? And I remember, I turned around. Okay, so, oh, great. Not only am I furious, but now I'm going crazy. There's nobody there. What am I thinking? I remember thinking to myself, yeah, I am venting. You bet I'm venting. And if you got answers, I'd sure as heck like to know what they are. And then that sense, that presence moved, I want to say, into my head, into my mind. And I began hearing inside my mind, like if you're listening to the sound of your own thoughts. Did you ever observe yourself thinking? Sometimes you can actually almost hear your thoughts with an unspoken voice, what I call a voiceless voice. But you nevertheless hear the thoughts. And so I started hearing thoughts. Okay, if you want answers, ask away. So I started writing down on my yellow legal pad the questions that I had. And no sooner did I even start the sentence, the answer would come to me like a download, just. So I started writing what I want to say, hearing in my mind.
Yeah.
And I began writing and writing. And I even at one point, this is a true story, I actually had to say, whoa, slow down, not so fast. I can't write that fast.
Right.
And actually the thoughts came to me more slowly.
Wow.
Almost as if the voice began to pick up the speed of my ability to handwrite the answer. And I was writing it, it was like taking dictation, very much like taking dictation. But when I would receive the answer to any question I had, I would have lots of what I would call yeah buts. Yeah, but what about this? Yeah, but what about that? No, no, no. Wait a minute. That can't be true. So I kept on writing my answers and my yeah buts, and which produced additional questions, and I would get additional answers until what I was experiencing for hours on end was question, answer, question, answer, question, answer. This went on for 6 or 8 hours. Fortunately, the next day happened to be a Saturday and I wasn't working. So I allowed myself to just have the experience, as I recall, till around 9:30 or 10 o'clock in the morning. Mind you, this started around 4:23 in the morning. So I was still doing this, but I was starting to run out of energy, my hand, just like when you write a very long letter, start
Yeah.
getting writer's cramp.
Yeah.
This I wasn't using a computer, as you pointed out. This was quite a while ago, and I didn't have a laptop computer in my home, and I was just writing this all out by hand. But I found it fascinating, so I let it go at that. I got on with my day, but the next morning, at 4:23 in the morning or so, I woke up again, and I had this urge to get back to the yellow legal pad, get back to the process. So I did. I went back out, and there was my legal pad on the coffee table, almost filled. And I had to run out to the drugstore. I remember that day and get a few more yellow legal pads. And I did. I bought 3 or 4 of them. Before I finished, I wound up with like 15 or 18 yellow legal pads full of handwritten notes back and forth, question, answer, question, answer, question, answer. And and I began to feel, even at the beginning, when I first wrote the very first response that I was receiving, to answer your question about how it felt, I felt tearful. I could feel the tears brimming at the ridge of my eyes. I wasn't, outright crying out loud, but just very tearful. The kinds of tears, the kind of tears that we experience when we're full of joy. When
Yeah.
something joyful is happening, and we don't know why, but we're just filled with tears of joy. That's how it felt. So I kept on up with the experience. And then at one point, Julie, I'm about 2/3 of the way through the very early going, I saw myself writing, this will one day become a book, and it will be accessed by many people. And I remember what I thought in that moment. I thought, now I gotcha. Now I gotcha. Because everything else that I've been receiving was conceptual in nature. Could be, could not be, who could tell? Who would know?
Right.
But here was a statement of fact that could be measured. It has a measurable outcome.
Yeah.
This will one day become a book. And I thought, of course, there's no way in the world that any publisher, on the planet is going to publish a book by a guy who sent in handwritten notes. I could just imagine him. I can imagine the publisher going out to his staff saying, hold the presses, hold the presses. We got a guy here who's talking to God. It's not going to happen, of course. And I knew it wasn't one chance in a million. I was a man of the world. I wasn't born yesterday. I was almost 50 years old.
Right.
I thought, this is not going to happen. So I thought, I'm just going to send it in. I'm going to send in these handwritten notes to a publisher. And then I thought, maybe I better not do that. What if they get lost? So I did, in fact, find a stenographer, a friend of mine, a friend of a friend, who was a court stenographer. And I said, would you be willing to just, and I said, don't have much money to pay you, but I could give you a little bit. She said, oh, okay, I'll be happy to. And she typed up the notes, and she came to my little cottage about a week later and said, what is this stuff? Where is this coming from? This is unbelievable. I said, really? And she's the first person I showed it to. She said, I can't believe what I'm typing here. I said, well, interesting. So I sent it to the publisher, who called me in about 2 days and said, we're going to publish this book. We don't want it. We wish you wouldn't call it Conversations with God, because it's going to be a pushback. People are going to be pushed away from it. No one's going to want to read a book with that title. But if you can give it a new title. And I said, no, I can't. Honestly, I can't. I experienced it as a conversation with God. I'm not going to call it something else. That's what it is. Call it that or don't publish it. And they said, well, okay. And they published it by that title. And they were right. Not many people really were that interested. It only sold over 1 million copies. and wound up being translated into 37 languages. Not bragging, just noticing.
It's just, yeah. Hold on. Everyone watching. It's going up here. There we go. Now it's on the bookshelf. Conversations with God. Yeah. Wow. That's an amazing, amazing story. I actually have tears in my eyes as you're speaking, just tuning into that. It's easy to hear it now. I'm just thinking of where you were then, in this little cottage in the back on the legal path. Like it's just, to me, it showcases what I think you really also talk about in this book now, the God solution, about this essence of love, and it coming through you, and just how beautiful, and that you kept with that title, that you kept with it.
I didn't really feel I had a choice. Julie, I should set the stage a little more firmly. Nothing in my life was working at that point. I didn't wake up at 4:23 in the morning angry about nothing. Here, just to set the stage.
Yeah.
I had just been fired, just been released, not fired, downsized is a better, because I wasn't fired, for bad performance.
Right.
I was just downsized because the company was losing money, and
right.
I was last in, first out.
Right.
Seniority. So the seniority rule got me, and I was out the door. So I had lost my job. My relationship with my significant other was dissolving. It had already dissolved at that point, right in front of my eyes. And then, to add insult to injury, I'm driving down the road, actually going to visit my children at the home of my then former wife for parental visitation. I'm on the way, and some older gentleman, God bless him, decides to turn in front of me. He makes a left turn in front of me. He misjudged my speed. I wasn't going fast. Even the police records showed, because they measure the skid marks, I was going about 23 miles an hour. I happened to be just tootling along, but he misjudged my speed, cracked right into the side of my car, into the the left front side of my car, the driver's side, and I broke my neck. The impact snapped my neck. And I'm not talking about a hairline fracture. I'm talking about a 3/4 inch avulsion fracture of the 7th cervical vertebrae posteriorly. I recall the exact wording on the medical report. A 3/4 inch fracture in your neck is big enough to put a pencil through. We're not talking about a hairline fracture.
Wow.
And when I got to the hospital, the doctor said to me, "Young man, you are luckier than you know, because most people who suffer this kind of a break in the neck die, because it usually severs the spinal cord.
Yeah.
Or if they don't die, they're usually paralyzed for life." He said, "You are neither. It's going to take a while to rehabilitate you, could be a year or two, but you've not suffered any severe paralysis, and you're still alive." And I thought, why? Why? And then that's what put me in that place. When I woke up at 4:23 in the morning, and I said, "Okay, what does it take to make life work?" I mean, I've obeyed the rules, well, most of them. I didn't break any really big rules.
Right.
And I mean, what does it take? What don't I understand here? That was the background that caused me to go to that yellow legal pad. And I see now, of course, that all of it was a blessing. I wound up living on the sidewalk, you should know, for a year. That is, I had no job. Once I broke my neck, I couldn't even get a job. I was applying. I just lost my job, as I explained. But I went around looking for any kind of work. Box boy at the grocery store. I'll do anything. I'll sweep up. I'll clean the bathrooms at the hotel. Give me anything. Be a janitor, night watchman. Nobody would hire me for the simplest job. They used to do it. One guy was honest with me. He said, look. He said, "Mr. Walsh, you're a walking insurance claim. You're walking around with a Philadelphia collar, with a therapeutic collar on you, holding your head up. One wrong move, and we're going to be one to paying your insurance bills, your health insurance, for the rest of our lives. No, we can't hire somebody who's already crippled. We can't have you working here." I couldn't find work anywhere. I wound up losing even that little grandma apartment. I was no longer living there. And I wound up living on the sidewalk, living on the street. And I had nowhere to go. My former wife did, God bless her, let me have the sleeping bag and the tent that we had as our camping equipment. She said, "Okay, take it." And I had a tent and a sleeping bag. That was it. and that's all I had. And 2 pair of slacks, a couple of shirts, 1 pair of shoes, the extent of my worldly possessions. And I lived in that tent on a little piece of land. And I walked the streets. This is not for a tough week or a tough month or even, a tough winter. This went on for a year of my life.
Wow.
And I would get up in the morning with nothing, not even 25 cents to my name, because whatever I did collect that day on the street was already gone. So hit the pavement again, going from person to person with my hand out. Could you help a person in need? Would you be willing to just give me anything? Some people would say, well, all I have is a couple of coins. I said, honest to God, a couple of quarters. If I could get a couple of quarters from everybody, I could eat today. Please let me have those couple of quarters. And I learned about pride and the loss of it and the regaining of it and the regaining of strength and courage to even ask for help. I learned about all of that. And I learned about how it was to get up in the middle of the night and not know how you're going to eat the next day. And wait for the police to come along and tell you to move the tent. And don't think you're going to camp out here because you can't. And I lived that way for a year. That's when I started asking God, all right. Obviously, there's something I don't understand.
Yeah.
What is it that I don't understand? And that's really what created what I came to call my conversations with God. Who would have thought? I did send it to a publisher and they did print it. And who in a million years would have ever imagined that it would wind up being read by people all over the world in 37 different languages and by some young woman in the Washington, D.C. area calling me on the phone and asking me questions about today. Who would have thought? But that's my story and I'm sticking to it.
Wow. I just, that is a low that, I'm thinking, gosh, I've had lows. I thank goodness. I mean, I haven't experienced that, but I can't even imagine. Remember you talking about your background and then you had struggled. I didn't realize, my gosh, to go a whole year on the street. I mean, of course, I'm thinking, using the restroom, like cleanliness.
You can't
eating.
even imagine, my dear Julia, you can't even imagine. I'd go into restaurants
Right.
and the manager would meet me at the door. He'd see me coming in, or if he was somewhere near the front entrance.
Yeah.
And they would say, no, don't, because of course it looked terribly unkempt. I didn't smell all that good. My hair, I hadn't had a haircut in weeks. I looked like, an unsavory character.
Yeah.
He said, no. I said, please, I just need to use the restroom. Just need to use a bathroom. I'll be in and out. I can't, but just no, I can't. And I remember one time the owner of the place, a lady who must have owned it, she came up behind him. I remember distinctly, and she just said, "Oh, for heaven's sake, Jim, let him in." And she looked at me. She said, "In and out, promise?" I said, "Promise." In and out, just to find a place to relieve yourself.
Wow.
Forget about eating. But to go into a restaurant like that and smell all the food, smell all the savory steaks on people's plates and such, and then walk out and hit the street again to see if you can collect $1.15 and maybe buy a bag of French fries before the day was over.
Wow.
Interesting way to live. They made a movie of it, of course. Hollywood came along years later. The producer who produced Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure and many other films. They asked me if they could make a movie of my life, and they put most of this on film in the movie called Conversations with God.
Wow. I'm just thinking, what might have been going through your head, the anger, I don't know, maybe worthiness and, how you felt and thought about yourself. And then it's almost, and I'm curious, this book, because I've listened and read it, many times. It's funny when you ask those questions, I'm like, I think I'm in his head. Like I would have asked that question too. I'm always so grateful. I'm like, and usually way more articulate, but did you, it almost feels like that book that was it part of the healing agent for you? So take us from to be there. Yeah. Wow.
I'm sorry, I interrupted the flow. Go ahead and finish your thought.
Well, no, just from that, I'm like the gap from, I can't even imagine thinking you walking in this restaurant, smelling food, just needing to use the bathroom, like hoping you're going to eat, hoping you have a place to sleep, probably anxious. I can't even imagine your body and how you felt. And then to the place where now it's being published and how life has just turned around. And I know you talked a bit about, you just didn't understand it. Like, where's the cliff notes? Like, give me the guide. Like, what did I miss here? Like, why don't I know calculus? Like, I thought the adding and subtracting was enough. And how, maybe just if it's okay to share a little bit about that turning the boat around. How did that happen? What was that like?
Well, how it happened was simply they published a book.
Yeah.
And within within 2.5 months, something like 14 weeks, as I recall, the book was on the New York Times bestseller list. Much to the surprise because the publisher was not a major publisher. We're not talking about Random House or one of the big publishers. It was a relatively small publisher.
Yeah.
Of independent books on the East Coast called Hampton Roads. But the book wound up making the New York Times bestseller list, and then one of the major publishers swooped in and asked this smaller publisher they wanted to buy the book from them. They saw that the book was doing very well on the list, and so they offered the small publisher a substantial amount of money. That's all in the movie, by the way. They offered him actually $1 million for the book. And this is in the film, and he rejected it. He said, "No, I don't need $1 million." He said, "We can make $1 million on our own." And the publisher in New York said, "Okay." It was Putnam, the Putnam publishing people, and Putnam said, "Okay, $1.5 million, but that's our final offer." And I looked at I was there with the publisher, and I thought, he's not going to turn this down. And he didn't. He said, "Well, okay, all right, fair enough. You got it. It's yours." And Putnam bought the book for $1.5 million, part of which, of course, I received, and a substantial part of it. So I went literally overnight from a person who I was under a roof at that point. I don't want to pretend I was still outside. I was under a roof at that point, but I was young. I had nothing to speak of. And I was literally rags to riches. And that's also demonstrated in the movie.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden I realized the next morning that I had more money than I could ever imagine having in a lifetime. And I could spend it as I chose. And I didn't go on a spending bender. I didn't go out and buy all kinds of fancy stuff. I didn't even know how to do that. I didn't have the point of view about life to go ahead and do that. But I did, find myself a nice apartment that I could rent, and bought a few clothes and like that. And then I realized, and I got my first royalty check. I'm telling you really private stuff. I don't normally share this, but you asked a private question. I remember when I got my first royalty check, and I opened it up. I remember this vividly. $90,000 as a royalty check. And I thought, oh my God, what's happened here?
Right.
What has happened here? This is outside of my ability to even comprehend.
Yeah.
And so I saw my life change dramatically. I didn't go on a bender. Like I said, I did go out and buy a new car. Fair enough. Got myself this was the first new car I ever bought in my life. I was 50 years old. I never bought a new car in my life.
Yeah.
I purchased used cars, secondhand cars, but it was the first time I ever bought a brand new car. And I did. I bought a new car right off the lot. But that was the biggest thing I wanted, and everything else. And it was not like Cadillac or a Lincoln. It was just I think it was a Buick. No, it was an Oldsmobile. I remember that now because I remember thinking my father used to drive an Oldsmobile. Does anybody drive an Oldsmobile today? I mean, you see how old I am. But anyway, that's what I bought. And that was the biggest purchase I made. And I just moved through my life. But I can tell you one thing, Julie, I can tell you one thing. I never passed a person on the street who I could see needed some help. Somebody leaning up against the wall of a building, maybe with a little bottle of something in a brown paper bag, taking a sip because it's all he could do. It's the best he could do with his mind is just dull it with a little basket out in front of him, with a little cardboard sign that says anything helps. I never, ever, 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 from that day to this, passed a person in need without slipping a little something their way. And I make sure, and I tell everyone I talk to, and every one of my audiences, all the lectures I've done, and I've lectured all over the world, in most of the major capitals on the planet. I've lectured, and I've told my audiences in all those languages, always keep a little spare. Have it in the dashboard of your car. Have it on the tray next to the ashtray. Have some in your pocket when you're walking down the street. Just a little spare. A couple of $5 bills or even a 10. And as you're walking down the street, let it be your vote, your voice of gratitude. Thank you, God. Pass it along. You could never know how much that can mean to a person who could live for 3 days off of that $10 and find a way to stay alive. But more importantly, renew their faith in the human race and in life itself.
Wow, it's beautiful. That's really, I remembered your story. Just you were talked about the younger couple that you took in and gave them whatever was in your fridge, and you gave them some hot chocolate, and you were out. Like, I just remember that story. I remember you talking about it and thinking, that I didn't realize the background that you'd come from, and I thought that's so lovely that you did that. And I think today, I just love what you said about restoring faith in humanity. And I know this is something you get into in your most recent book. And I have to tell you, it's just really quickly, I was with my son yesterday. We were out actually in Bethesda, the area. And in the DC area, there was a man there, and people just walked by him. He was sitting with his cardboard box and his, it makes me want to cry at his bowl. It really, it brings tears to my eyes because I could see, the light in his eyes. And I had I gave him some change. It wasn't a lot, but we went to the supermarket. I had to return something, and just, I was like, I don't need a whole thing of berries. And my son was like, he might be allergic. He's going to have it's very cute, actually. He's like, he could have a reaction. So I thought, okay, it's not a lot, but at least I got a huge bag of oranges because they're easy to peel and they're vitamin C. I was thinking, what's nutritional? I don't know if he eats, I probably could have gotten more, could have gotten a sandwich, but I figured, well, that I know at least is something healthy. And he was, it was nothing to do that. He was so grateful. And, as I was finishing the book, I don't want to give it all away, but, you talk about this in your last chapter, this, having that gratitude factor. And I'm really touched by what you shared. I haven't heard you said it like that. And I saw it yesterday, and I think there's this restoring hope in humanity. And I can't think of a more important topic right now is restoring hope in this species. And, just to dive into this book, I was like, everyone needs to read The God Solution. Everyone needs to read this. I was like, I would be part of the religion you're creating or whatever you want to call it. So I just thank you for sharing that and who you are.
I want to say, Julie, to those who are watching us now, that this is way more than simply doing nice things. This is more than, your good deed for the day.
Yeah.
I don't want people to think that it's that simplistic. It's a wonderful thing to do. I'm not denigrating it or making it small. Please, if you can think of a good deed every day, do it. But this goes way beyond that.
Yeah.
This goes to a place of actually changing your mind by changing your whole definition of who and what God is. of what God wants and how that new idea flows through you in a particular way at a particular time for a particular reason. Because it's our fundamental idea about God, the idea that we hold inside of ourselves. Who is God anyway? Is there even a God? And if there is a God, because the book starts, by the way, with that question, folks. The book begins with an interesting question. Hey, you know what? If there is a God, we can't even be sure there is. But if there is a God, why is the world such a mess? Excuse me, but what's the point of having a God if the world is continually facing the danger of its own self-annihilation or falling apart for one reason or another from the beginning of human history? And increasingly, as each day goes by, as we increase in our so-called ability to solve problems, we have even larger ones and larger ones and larger ones. So, excuse me, but what's the point of having a higher power if we are powerless to do anything about the way life is being experienced on Earth? That's how the book begins, with a very pointed and direct question. And then the book says, you know what? Had you considered the possibility that the problem is not that there's not such a thing as a higher power, but that simply we haven't learned how to use it? That simply we can't even agree on who and what God is. And the book points out that there are 4,300 religions on the face of the earth right now. I didn't make that number up. Google it. Just Google the question, how many religions are there on earth? It'll tell you just under 4,300 religions on the face of the earth today. But with all those religions on the face of the earth, we can't seem to agree. We can't come to a unified statement about who and what God is, what God wants, what God demands and requires. What happens if we don't meet God's demands? And how can we use this so-called higher power in some way that allows us to produce the outcomes that we say we wish to produce? And the challenge that I say, that I place, I should say, before humanity, is the challenge of creating a brand new definition. Because, Julie, it's been my observation that the way we define God, the way we think of God, is how we behave. That is, we think of God as a judgmental, condemning, and punishing deity. God does judge us. God will condemn us. God will punish us if we don't do what God wants. Virtually every one of the major religions on the face of the earth teach those three principles. Again, I'm not making that up either. This is theology. And because we observe and have been taught that a God judges, condemns, and punishes, we decide it's okay for us to judge, condemn, and punish others. Now, it stands to reason that if we were to change our entire theology, our entire idea of who and what God is, how God functions, how the deity moves through the experience we call life, that we would move through life in a different way as well. What if we decided, dare I suggest it, that God could be defined in two words: pure love. Now, when I put that in front of audiences on the internet these days, I do a lot of lecturing on the internet, and people will say, they'll raise their hand, on the Zoom platform, and they'll say, "Oh, Neale, come on, is that it? I mean, that's the brand new revelation from the guy who talked to God. God is love. Of course, God is love. Everyone agrees that God is love. No one would disagree with that. Yeah. I said, wait, relax, guys. I didn't say God is love. You didn't hear me say God is love. I said God is pure love. And there's a difference.
Yeah.
Pure love wants, needs, expects, hopes for, and commands nothing in return for the expressing of it. That's pure love. Do we dare believe
Mm.
in a God who needs nothing, who wants nothing, who demands nothing, and therefore, can I say it out loud?
Yeah. Please.
Punishes nothing, condemns nothing,
Yep.
and judges nothing. Do we dare believe in that kind of God? Well, of course, it would be hard for us to do that, because if we embraced such a notion, we would have to behave that way ourselves.
Yeah.
Because if we want to model our behavior on the highest demonstration of what is good and right and true there is in the universe, if we want to model our behavior on the behavior of God, we would have to ourselves never again judge, condemn, or punish anybody. Wow. Would that alter human behavior? Would that bring a change in our politics, in our economics, in our social constructions, to say nothing of our spirituality? I'm sorry, but it would be revolutionary. That is, it would change everything. And that's what I call the God solution.
Need a
Dare you.
moment. Yeah.
Dare you, double dare you,
Mm.
to decide that you are pure love, that you are an individuation
Yeah.
of divinity. I'm not saying you're God. Somebody accused me the other day on my Facebook page, just walking around saying that I'm God. I didn't say that you're a God, not in the totality of God. I'm saying that you are an individuation of the divine, that you are to God as a wave is to the ocean. When the wave arises from the ocean, it's not separate from the ocean. It's not other than the ocean. It's simply the ocean arising in individuated form, in all its glory and all its power, duplicating the glory and power of the ocean itself in singular and proportionate form. And when that expression is complete, it recedes back into the ocean. That is precisely the relationship that we have with the divine, in my understanding. That's what I was told in my conversations with God. Now, if humanity simply embraced that notion, that understanding, and simply changed its idea of the God that we received back into, of who and what is God. Is it really a being that's angry? You know what's interesting? Read the Bible with a calculator. You probably don't want to do it, but just for the sake of the experiment, pick up a hand calculator and put it next to your Bible and read the Bible with a calculator, and add up every time there's a statement in the Bible about how God, either himself or others at his direction, killed or hurt people. And you'll discover that over 1 million people have been killed at the hand or the command of God in the Bible.
Yeah.
As recorded in sacred scripture. See, because here's how it is. I don't know how it was for you folks, but I was born and raised, I was in the Catholic tradition. I'm not going to Catholic bash. As I said earlier, I don't want to get into that, but I want to just share with you an anecdote. When I was 9 years old, I was told by the priest in catechism class, if you miss Mass on Sunday, then don't have a good excuse. You know, if you're caring for a sick mother, or if you're an adult and you have to go to work, fair enough. But if you just go off to play a game of golf, or if you're a 9-year-old child and you want to just go play a little softball on Sunday morning at the playground, and if you should get hit by a car the next day and unfortunately die in the accident, you're not going to heaven. You will not return to God in heaven. You may not go to hell. Hell is for the really severe offenders. You'll go to a place called purgatory. Purgatory, where you have to suffer the same as hell, only it's not forever. I've had a couple of marriages like that, but that's another whole story. So here you are in purgatory, and you have to burn off your sins until you can, and it's suffering abject suffering until you can be purified, and then you can return to God in heaven because you missed Mass on Sunday. But the teaching of that particular church is even worse than that.
Mm.
I was told that if I belong to the wrong religion, it doesn't matter how nice I am, how kind I am, how
Right.
compassionate I am, how caring I am, how generous I am, how forgiving I am, how loving I am. None of that matters. I could be one of the nicest people on the face of the earth, but you know what? I chose the wrong religion. And God says, sorry, you're going to hell, or you'll suffer everlasting torture. What can I say? Them's the rules.
Right.
You got to belong to this church or you're out. If you're a Buddhist, if you're a Muslim, if you're a Jew, if you belong to no religion whatsoever, if you happen to be, what can I tell you? You're out. Because there's only one way to get in. And that's just how it is. And that's the God in whom we believe. No wonder we play a game on this planet. You got to belong to our nationality or you're out. Build the fences, build the walls. You can't come in unless you're one of us. Where did we get that idea? No, you can't come in unless you're one of us. And we wonder why the world is the way it is. Well, come on, people. Come on. I mean, really? This is the God in whom we believe? Or is it time for a new understanding? I'm suggesting that the world is begging for a new understanding of life and how it works, of God and who and what it is, of ourselves and who we are and what is our true identity, a new understanding of everything. Time to throw out the old understandings because you know what's fascinating? We've been living with these old understandings about God for thousands of years. I mean, we've been taught this for thousands of years. And we're still seeking and struggling and striving and suffering. Do you know that 653 children on this planet die of starvation every day? No, not every day. I meant to say every hour.
Yeah. Mm.
I made that mistake deliberately because I wanted to catch you. I actually know the statistic. It's every hour.
That's crazy.
653 children die on this planet of starvation while we throw away more food in the restaurants of Paris, London, and New York than would be needed to feed an entire village for a week.
Yeah.
And we call ourselves an advanced civilization.
Mm.
Help me out. But there's something we can do about it. I don't want you to be one of those who says, well, Neale, you're raising very good points and we hear you, but what can I do? What you can do is move through the world in a way which demonstrates who and what you are with everything you think, say, and do, and which therefore shows others who they are as well. So raise not your fist to heaven and curse the darkness not, but be a light unto the darkness. Just a thought.
Oh. It's very powerful what you're saying. And one of the thoughts that comes to mind, I mean, this is a lot. I'm just thinking for everyone, I will have notes because there's so much in what you're saying. It's really about being this. The other piece, and you talk about this in the book, is understanding the concept of God, this deity. We're putting human terms on it. And I think you get into that mistake thinking that making God in the image of humans, I think is the way you said it. And it's a fallacy. That's where we, this judgmental, harsh, condemning entity, it's like, how could that even be? And it just reminds me of back to the beginning, this pure love, I'm going to write that somewhere where I can see this, the wanting, needing, expecting, commanding nothing in return, just for the expressing of it. Like that's something to really sit with and meditate over for a long time. That's pretty.
Can you even love your own spouse in that way? Forget about the world.
Yeah.
Can you even love the person across the pillow?
Yeah.
In that way, needing, wanting, expecting, hoping for, and demanding nothing in return. Dare you. I dare you.
Yeah.
But if you do it, even for a day, even for an hour, it'll change your life. Be careful. This stuff can change your life. Never walk through the world in the same way again.
Yeah.
Do I practice this all the time? 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? No. I'm not going to sit here and try to pretend that I do, because I don't.
Yeah.
It's a high mark, a high standard to meet. But at least now I know where I'm going. At least now I know why I came to this planet, what my purpose is here, because I finally know who I am and what I'm doing here. It took me a half century on the planet to even come to that awareness. And billions of people are not in that place from my observation, nor was I for a half century. I thought it was about get the car, get the girl, get the job, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Get the house, get the better car, get the better job, get the better house. Doing the best I can. Hey, I'm doing the best I can. Neale, give me a break. And you know what's interesting? 98% of the world's people are spending 98% of their time on things that don't matter. On things that don't matter, that have nothing to do with what you're really doing here. That's the first sentence of the first paragraph of the first chapter of a book I wrote called The Only Thing That Matters. You might find it interesting to pick up that piece of literature. 98% of the world's people are spending 98% of their time on things that don't matter. You're here. You came here to physicality to complete the agenda of the soul. Not to get the guy, get the girl, get the car, get the job, get the house, get the office in the corner with your name on the door. That's not what's going on here. Yet when you serve your soul's agenda, which is the same, by the way, for every person, the agenda of the soul is the same for every sentient being in the universe. To express, to experience, to demonstrate, and to complete the placing into physicality of your true identity as an individuation of divinity, or in a simple word, to evolve into the demonstration of that. Now, what's interesting is that when you pay attention to that agenda and really serve that agenda to the best of your ability, all these other things fall in on you automatically. All these other things that you think you're trying to accomplish. Get the guy, get the girl, get the car, get the job, get the house, get the better car, get the better job, get the better house. It all happens automatically. Or as someone much more eloquent than I will ever be once put it, seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things will be added unto you. I could, of course, be wrong about all of this, but I don't think so.
Taking a breath over here as I just breathe that in. I'm saying to all of you beautiful listeners, this is one of the more stunning conversations that I've been part of or been able to share. I just thank God you survived that car incident, and you're so living your soul's agenda. It's oozing out of you, Neale. And I think what you said earlier, that the best way, I think, to paraphrase, is to be it, to be this, and to be a model for others. And you are that for me. The goal of this whole show is really this idea of, the Youest you, tuning into that individuated, specific, like your special wave. I love that. Whatever that wave is of the ocean. And I'm really behind, I always use my body. I'm just fully aligned with what you're saying. And I know you talk a lot about the power of gratitude and really tuning into that essence. And I got to tell you, I'm just feeling so thankful for who you are and what you're sharing with the world. We need it. We need this. I hope everyone's listening and internalizing.
I hope everyone hears me when I tell you that I'm not my book, that I do better talking it than I do living it. But at least now, as I've said a number of times, at least now I know what I'm up to. And I went through most of my life having no idea who I am and why I'm here. At least now I'm clear about that. And that gives me a direction in which I can move. And I hope that on my gravestone, it'll be said, he almost got there.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Well, you're definitely like, if this isn't getting there, maybe we never get there. Maybe that's part of maybe it's aiming high for it.
Well, I'm talking it pretty good. And when I get off the air here and I close down my computer and get back into the regular living of my life, we'll see how it goes in the kitchen.
It always shows up in the kitchen, doesn't it? My last question, if it's okay with you, I usually ask, I call it a heart flare, where maybe there's something I didn't ask you, or just a feeling of your heart wanting to share something that just feels like a little flare that is coming up to the surface. And I wanted to give you the space and grace and time if there's anything else maybe I forgot to ask, or just that you felt like sharing for your heart flare.
I would share a tool. People have asked me at lectures, and when I'm doing a book signing or whatever, they've asked me, can you give me a tool, just a simple tool that I could just take away from this encounter, and that could allow me to step off onto this path you're describing. So here's a tool that I would suggest. I use it myself, and it helps me. Every day before I see another person for the first time that day, maybe it is when I open my peepers and I see my beloved on the next pillow across the bed, or maybe it's just a family member across the house, or perhaps it's a friend, a neighbor across the street, or a total stranger across town, or a person I never even heard of, but just have discovered across the world. Whoever it might be, before I begin my encounter with that person on that day, I say to myself, I don't say it out loud, by the way. Don't say this out loud because you're most likely to be misunderstood. But say it to yourself, just a little comment from you to you before you begin your first interaction with that other human being. Here's what I say to myself. I have come that you may have life, and that you may have it more abundantly. Your life will be made better today for my having passed through it. I promise you.
Oh. Wow. Can you say that one more time, please, Neale?
That one more time, please. She said, can you say that one more time, please? And I said, that one more time, please.
Can you repeat one of the most, I love what you just said. I'm like, I'm going to write that. We're going to have it here.
I got to have a little fun.
You are so great. I was like, I did just say that.
Okay, here's what I say to myself. Even before I say the first word or have the first interaction with the person on the other side of the bed, much less the person on the other side of the world. I have come that you may have life and that you may have it more abundantly. Your day will be made better today from my having passed through it. I promise you.
That is stunning. And if we all said that, can't even
If you
imagine.
do that for 90 days, be careful. Because if you do that for 90 days without fail, before your first interaction with anybody, the clerk at the post office, the lady at the coffee shop, much less the person across the kitchen, if you do that for 90 days, somebody is going to look at you and they're going to say their version of, by whose authority are you acting like this? And you will then get to decide, who are you really? And why are you here?
Mm.
It'll only be the single most important decision you ever made in your life. But what do I know? I could be wrong about all of that.
Mm.
Take it in and throw it out if it doesn't resonate with you.
Mm.
And if it does, embrace it and move forward in your life as one of God's blessings.
Mm. Thank you so much. I'm on for the challenge. Side note, we can talk after. I'm like 90 days doing it right here. All of my listeners can do it with me. Let's do it together. Let's do this. Thank you so much for your 39 books in. What do you know? All I know is what you're saying is resonating on a deep level, and it's truly an honor. And I hope to have you back again soon for the rest of the 500 questions I have for you.
I will come back whenever you ask.
Thank you for being such a light in so many of our lives and for what you shared today.
Thanks for the opportunity to share this time with you. Bye for now.